Hey there. Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, let's go over the two most critical steps there is to making this easy box. These two steps are what make the box come together quick, easy, and dead on straight when you get done. The two critical things you have to do is get your 45 miters square and exactly at 45 on all your corners, and you have to do that in pairs. That's the beauty of making this box. You're really only making 3 pieces, but you're making 2 of each piece. So as long as you can make things identical and make these 3 pieces without measuring, and let me remind you, we haven't picked up a ruler to do this job yet, and we're never going to, all the way through. The hardest part most people have is getting this thing straight at exactly the miter you want and square. The second hardest thing is to do the top and the bottom pieces that you're going to put in here and get those cut to the right size. Measuring is a real pain. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And when I show you that, you're going to love it because it is going to be so easy for you to always make your box lids now without having to ever measure. So stay tuned. We'll do that after we do this. First thing I'm going to do is show you how I do it on this machine right here. My oscillating, it's a rigid oscillating belt sander. But don't get upset because you say, well, I don't have one of those. That's fine. I'm going to show you an alternative way also. Then we'll go do the box lid and the bottom. Okay? So don't panic. Just stay here the whole time and we'll get through this. All right. Let's do it quick. To do it on here, all I need is I need my miter, gauge, and because my sandpaper is going this way, rotating, it's going to want to take everything and push it that direction. So this is in the slot, but I can't just leave it like that. So what I did is I drilled a little hole in the end here of my miter slot, and I made just a little short board that fits in with the bolt. Bolt goes in the hole. This drops down in there, and then I take this and push it up against there. Now, this is not going to push this and move it at all. This will stay put right here because all pressure is going to be going that direction. So now this is ready for me to do it, except the angle. Now we're going to do 45 miters, and that's one thing I love about this machine. It has a preset for doing 45s, right like there. So I'm going to snug it down here, and now we're already ready to do our cut. Let me get my remote button to help keep this sawdust down here, and let's make these up. Now the one thing I should tell you, sorry about that, but when you do these, one thing you excuse me, one thing that'd be a good idea to do is to mark your board right across there as close to the end as you can, if these are pretty close. And I mark them. That gives me a line to watch as I'm sanding it away. That gives me a line of reference to make sure that things are going okay. And a lot of times it gives me the mark I need so I can see how much I'm taking away to make sure I don't do too much. So I make a quick line right up there on all ends of it. Then I put it up here. And now we turn it on. And sand this down. All I do is I hold it against this, and I hold it down all at the same time, and I gently push it up against the sandpaper, like so. And I listen, I watch my line disappearing, and then I come back, turn it over, and I do that again on all 4 pieces. I don't really bear into it. Take your time. Most of the time you don't need a whole lot to get it nice and square. But because of the way this is set up, I am going to get a perfect square every time. At a 45. Now once I've done these the two pieces that I have to pair up, now comes the next step is I want to make sure that they're the same exact length. To do that, I use this again. I set it back to back down against the flat surface of my table and up against my miter gauge. Now it's exactly square here, touching at the bottom. I have it even on the sides, and I look at the top, and they better be exactly to each other. As long as they're exactly to each other, then you know this thing, they're identical, and that's what you want. Do that to all 4 of these, and you now have these pieces done. So now we want to go over to, before we do, let's talk about the alternative way. Now, I see this machine out there everywhere. It's a great machine. There's lots of other things I'm going to do with this machine that I haven't done, like a thickness sander, a circle sanding jig. Those are all sorts of things. You don't see much of that out there for this machine, and there's hundreds of these things out there. I've seen them all over, probably thousands. It's probably the most common sanding machine that there is. But what you want to do here, when I do this method, instead of using a hand plane, I use sandpaper. But you want your sandpaper to be on an electrical unit. You don't want to hand sand. You really want the sandpaper to be moving on a machine. So you could do the same thing I did here. You could do it with a simple hand drill even. And put a round disc on there, mount your drill. And, you know, things like that. I have a lathe that has a 12-inch disc on it for sanding. I could do it on there. I have my sanding belt, my belt sander here. And I already had this piece here that I have had for years. And it just sets in there, drops down into the handle, drops in there, and now it's in place and stays put. And I've used it this way because sometimes my sanding has to be up here because I need to sand something really wide. And I can go back and forth on this. And here you're limited on your width of how you want to, what you want to sand. So I still use this occasionally, but I don't use it to do miter joining. But you can take this same machine, and if I was going to do that with a belt sander that I'm doing with that for my miters, first thing I would do is take this and mount it on a wall so that the sandpaper is going down right in front of me. Then I would take and I'd make a table to fit there. And you can make a table that's removable. This probably how I would end up doing this. I would just have this piece that would mount there instantly and give me an instant table at 90 degrees. So I could actually join 90-degree stuff on here without any problem going across. Or you have the other end set up so you put it in this way, and now I can do miters the same way I did up here. I did take this and I did set this to exactly 45 degrees. So this sets here and it lines up perfectly to my 45 degree bevel. So I would get the same thing here that I get there. Also, it's critical is if you're going to use a fence, you got to make sure that this is 90 degrees to the plane. That's 90, but if I tip it over, that's still 90. And if that's flat here, it better also be straight all the way along here. You want this surface to be perpendicular to this surface exactly 90 degrees. This exactly at 45 to this plane. And that's a pretty simple setup that you can mount. So that's another way you can do what I did here. You don't have to have this expensive piece of equipment. I'm not sure what they're going for now. I think a little over, somewhere between $200 and $300, I think, but I'm not sure. But you could do it with a regular belt sander. You could set this kind of jig up on a disc sander. If you have a disc sander, either on your lathe or using your drill in a jig. So this is the theory of how to do it, though. Sandpaper is the key. Moving sandpaper. So if your sandpaper is doing the work and it's the one doing the spinning, so all you got to do is hold it against there. All you got to do is control that. Okay. Enough about that. If you had questions about it, thoughts, leave them below. So, but hopefully I cleared that up. So I now have done this. I've made sure the angles are now done, square to each other, and they're matching. Two pairs. Let's go over to the table saw. And let me show you how easy it is to cut a piece to the right size without doing any measuring over there. Because that's the other thing that's difficult about this. But we're going to show you easy peasy. You ready? Watch your step. Hazard area. So, here we are here at my table saw. I set my blade height to my work, and I have one of each of my box, an end and a side. And now we're going to take, I've already cut these to the right size. And that was because I wanted to have things ready as I go through this. But we're going to take this oddball piece here that's not the right size, and I'm going to cut it using my method. And then we'll compare it to the size of these. And if it comes out the same, you know it'll fit, because I know those do fit in here. And I did these the same way I'm going to do this. So you take this, take your piece, 45-degree down, and I set it against the fence. This other side here is what I'm looking for. Let me explain something here real quick so you know. On a miter joint with a dado, the distance from here to the other end of the dado where it hits the miter joint, that distance is what you want to be. A 1/16 of an inch less than that would be best, so you have a little bit of movement. When you glue it in, it's going to stay put, but that way you can get it to fit in there without obstructing putting your four sides together. So you can't make it too big. So, but also what you also need to understand is that the distance from here to here is also the same distance from this end to this inside bevel edge of your piece. So from here to the end is the same length as from here to here. Now, why does that make it easy? Because now I can just use that knowledge and put my piece up here. And if I cut lining up to that edge of my inside bevel of my 45 to my blade, then the piece is going to be the right width or the right length. In this case, we're doing the length. So when I put this here and I look at my blade, I'm actually have the outside of my blade setting just inside this edge. If I set it the other way so that the outside of the inside of the blade, this side of the blade, if it was touching the outer edge, you'd be on the outer length of how big this piece can be to fit. You want to give it a little fudge, so we're actually going to come in from that edge about a 1/16 of an inch. So I set it down and I make sure that I'm a 1/16 of an inch over that blade on the bottom, that the whole bevel on this side is there. Once I know I had that set there, lock it down, and now that is my width of my pieces. So I can take this one now and cut it. Now we're going to have to measure the other one the same way. So I'll bring it up, bring it over, lock it down, and I'm on this side. This right here is on this side of the saw blade because my blade is 1/16 of an inch thick. So make sure you have plenty of room there, but don't go too much or you'll be able to see the edge of the piece. So it's set, ready to go for the other dimension. And now, as you can see, this piece is exactly the same size as the other one. And I didn't measure it, but I knew it would be the same size because I used these to do my measurement. And that's how you measure what the dimension is without using a ruler. Anytime you use a ruler, you take a chance of making a mistake. One thing that's a beauty about this box, and then I'm going to let you go here because we're already at 15 minutes, it looks like. You can make this box so easy without measuring, means that you really can make it with very few mistakes too. Because you're not measuring, you're only making 3 pieces, the amount of mistakes you can make is very limited as to where the mistake would be. I showed you how to eliminate 2 of those mistakes. The third one you want to watch out for is you got to make sure they're the same width across. So if you start with one long board that's parallel on the 2 sides, you can make a box out of one long board. This one here was a 24-inch board long, this width. The piece of plywood has to be a little bigger than 2 of these pieces. If you lay them down on it, you make those 2 pieces into one box and nothing flat. We'll put this thing together on my next episode. I'll go over a couple of quick tips on it so you make it easy for you, show you how, and go over and discuss some of this stuff. If you want, after seeing that last video, if you want, I will set up my camera and I will come out here, now that you've seen all these steps, and I will take and walk through and do all those steps in my shop, and I'll be done in less than 10 minutes from start to finish. I'm making go from 2 boards to a box that you're ready to put a finish on. And I think we can do that in under 10 minutes. So, if you're interested in seeing those steps, try this box and the methods I tried. And after you've done it once or twice, you'll see how easy and quick you can do a miter box. And then if you want, I'll do it one time so you can see me go through all these steps. The other step I didn't talk about was rounding these over. Once you make this into a box, you got those sharp edges on it. Well, these inside ones, if you want to, this is the time to take it over to your router table and round these over. On the inside edge only. Don't round over the outside edge. That'll help your alignment by that being square still. Once it's glued together, then you can sand it down and round these over or put some kind of treatment on them that you want. So, that's it in a nutshell. Stay tuned. Next week we'll put it together. I'll show you a couple of quick tips I think you'll really like. Make it worthwhile to watch that one. And we'll go from there. I'm sorry this took longer than I'd hoped it would. But I think you got the gist of what we're doing. Don't forget, I don't like to use sharp blades. I use sandpaper. And this is why. So, if you want to discuss that, I'll be more than happy. Just leave a comment about it. I love it. If you want to see other ideas of how to take the sanding disc on the sand belt, the belt sander, put belt sander jig in YouTube, search, and you'll see all sorts of great examples of how to set it up. The only thing you want to do is make sure you make a table for it, like I showed you some kind, so you can do straight and 45s from some kind of board, or have a board that pivots like my rigid does. You can do all those things. There's lots of great ideas. I would do the whole project if I needed it, but since I don't, and there's so many examples out there, hopefully I showed you enough to know why you really want to have something like this. Okay? So, comments, leave them below. If you like this video, you learned something here, hit that like button. It helps me know that I'm doing the right thing, and gives YouTube the idea that maybe I am too. So, most importantly, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks. Hey, and we'll see you guys again very soon.